The bids are in. The gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast dedicated to all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and just wine. With you as always, I'm Jeff McGurn on WineBid's marketing team. Of course, joining me, as he does every week, is Paul Walker, our wine expert, or as we know him, the first consul of the Chianti fiasco. And today we're going to be going through our wine auction recap for the auction ending October 22nd, 2023. A lot of interesting stuff happening at auction, some impressive hammers, but I want to start us off with basically everything we see that's been getting a lot of action. Let's jump right into it and, let's take a look at some movers. Again, we keep talking about there's a lot of action at the lower end of the market. Kind of interesting to see these. I'll start off with the 2021, the Withers Winery Peter Vineyard Pinot Noir, which we had at $15, and they all sold for around like $28. We had 12 of them. So those, normally we're used to talking about like the super high-end wines that have big movement and double in price and stuff are very rare wines. But then you have something like this at a $15 price point that comes out and people are buying it for like $20.
It doesn't make any sense. This is a classic example where it had to roll and drop, and then it got bid back up to the original price, which is, doesn't make any sense. The original price was $25. And
then it went down.
It had to roll for like 5 auctions, and then everyone's like, no, we really want that wine at more than $25.
Like nobody wanted it at 25, but once it got down to 15, it was worth 28.
It was worth more.
It was worth more. So if you had bought it last week, you could have got it for $20.
This is where Jeff's wine investment expertise comes to play. So, yeah, if you think a wine's going to drop, just buy all of it and then hold on to it.
Well, I think that's the other aspect of this is that, I always say, like, we're not really, people see this as an auction website. I actually see this as more of a treasure hunting website. That there are so many good bottles out there that you're like, wait, nobody's bid on this? And it's because we have thousands of lots coming into auction every week. We have tens of thousands of over 10,000 bottles almost at any given time in auction, right? Yeah. And so you have this situation where you can have a bottle that slips through the cracks, right? Yeah. And it takes a week or two,
Well, and it's not like people aren't looking at it, because you can see with new wines, there's trackers on everything. So there's people are aware of it. They see it, but they're just like, I'm not sure.
I think what happens is sometimes, and I do this where a week will go by and I'm like, oh, shoot. Because we do the podcast, I usually will look at everything, but there are sometimes we don't get to a region and I don't look at it. And I go like, oh, shoot, I would have bought that. I totally forgot to look and see, what Sicilian Reds were in auction this week. I totally forgot to look at, Alsace this week.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's so much to sort of keep track of. It's impossible to know like whether or not. Also, if you're familiar with the wine, or if you've never heard of it, or which vintage. There's way too many variables. There's
so much going on.
But it's not like things just kind of fly under the radar. I think there's definitely still some steals out there, but it's pretty quick and easy to find additional information online, either if it's from the winery or from restaurant listings or importer listings or whatever it may be. So
there are definitely some steals out there. That's for
definitely. Oh yeah. There's.
We were just talking about a steal that I got yesterday. And I'm not going to mention it because I know I'm pretty sure I'm able to get that steal again.
It's back in auction this week. I might, not be able to help myself and mention it.
But, I don't know that we'll be able to get to the U.S. this week. We'll be focusing on France. And you know what? I'm not going to say anymore.
Okay. Now you're already narrowing it down.
Well, because it's only bots that listen to us. It's AI. So
yeah, that's true.
They're good at that stuff.
Hey, I want to tell you about a wine we were actually discussing earlier. If you skip down to the C's on your list of wines with 5 bids, the '06 Clos Rougeard Sommer Champigny, considered to be called the Clos, is hammered at 320, right? So this is one, the higher end of the market, where it's quite a bit rarer to find something, what is this now? How many years? I can't even add, but 17 years old? '06. So it started at 250, hammered at 320. So, these wines just continue to get bid up.
This is a sore spot for me. Okay. This is a sore spot for me. I was the first bid and I was like, 250, what a great deal, right? And then
not quite.
No, not quite.
And this is a wine that definitely does not go unnoticed, So
no, I watch the Rogers like crazy, and they just trickle in at a snail's pace. I mean, I think we're lucky if we get in one or two in a week or three, but we will go without it being in. I mean, I think I've been watching I think there was like a month where there was no Roger coming into auction. And it's not one that's easy to find at retail either. Like this one can be daunting. And it's one that, benefits from some age on it. So I'll bet that '06 is just screaming right now.
Yeah, for sure.
What about this 18 Domaine Pierre Ganon de l'Ardèche? I'm not even going to finish. I'm sure I'm butchering it. We had two of them, and they started at 66 bids, took it to about around $77, $76 a bottle.
Oh, the Gonal, yeah, the Gonal. That's like the second label of the Gonal Saint Joseph. It's like the Vin de l'Ardèche or whatever.
Yeah,
not surprising here because the other wines just continue to get pushed up. So that kind of seems to make sense for sure.
We had some movement on the Pierre Dubreuil Fontaine.
Yeah, this is one of my picks actually, because I think this Pernod Vergelès Dubreuil Fontaine. No, actually, I was thinking of a different wine. I'm sorry. That was actually quite surprising, but that's a rare one, right? That's a rare one. Pernod Vergelès from Dubreuil Fontaine, that's 13 years old. We've sold some in the past, actually more than I expected, but yeah, that's kind of interesting. Actually, that's a really good sort of example of something where I wouldn't have expected it to perform this well, considering it sold for $40 just last year. So it's just there's still a race for rare and kind of aged Burgundy that is obviously really, really difficult to find in the open market. It's all secondary market stuff. So
that was interesting to see so much action on these two bottles of 2014 Amapola Creek Monterosso Vineyard Zinfandel.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's true.
That's interesting. I mean, those things like 20 to 27. They last sold in March for 20, 5 bids each, right?
Yeah.
A lot of action on them.
I mean, it's probably also a good deal, just, considering Monterosso fruit, I think, is expensive. So if a winery is buying it, they're probably selling this wine for north of $40 at the winery. And of course, now it's 9 years old, so good luck. Again, these are things that you're not going to be able to replace.
No,
it's like Clos Rougeard's one thing. We'll always probably see recent or current vintages of it. And same thing with like a lot of high end Bergs and California wines. But like 9-year-old, very obscure, Monterosso. Well, I don't know. Amapola Creek's obscure to me. I haven't seen a lot of it in my time, but that's nearly impossible to replace.
We've got this. I was interesting. The 2020 Chateau Lanert, Chateauneuf du Pape Blanc. From 30 to 43.
Yeah, that one was. I think I actually had this in my Rhone picks last week, and if I didn't, I definitely was tracking it because it's one of those things where you see far less of the white than the red. And I think $30 for a new release, well-respected producer, and Lanert makes great wine. That's a steal, right? So
yeah, yeah.
And quite a few other people have figured that out too. So
yeah, $44 for a CDP Blanc from a good producer is a tremendous deal.
Yeah, because it's.
I mean, that's what you're normally going to. So you're going to pay, I mean, you're going to pay a good amount of money anyway. And then the 2014 Christopher Tynan wines, Tynan, Melagri, Galapavo, Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon. This one, we had two of them. They started at 170. They're hammering for between 2 and 215 a piece after 5 bids. So a lot of action on.
Yeah. This stuff is really, really, really small production. There's not a lot of it. And the 13 went for an insane price. I think it went for like $700 or $800 because it got a perfect Parker score. The 14, well, let's see, Jeb Dunnick gave it 100 points. So it's not like it was, lacking in scores. It's not the same vintage as 13 in Napa anyway, but it's comparatively a steal to, next to the 13. So I think a couple of people thought the same thing. Like, 170 for Tynan? Like, it's nice.
Yeah, it's a great deal.
Yeah. Because it's not cheap on the mailing list either. I think it's quite expensive. I would say it's probably around $200 on the mailing list. I actually have no idea, but yeah, that's a rare one. That's a rare one.
I mean, you already mentioned the Clos Berger. I'll mention one last lot before we go over to the heavy hitters and weekly winners. The 2020 Domaine Bernard Bonine Bourgogne Blanc.
Yeah, this BB. That's why I was confused about this because I didn't know what this BB, Initial BB, like stood for. If it's a special cuvee,
it means initials BB. In French, it's translated in English. It translates to initials BB.
Oh, thanks. Anyway, Bernard Bonat, we mentioned last week. I was like, keep an eye on this stuff because everything that's gone in auction is extraordinarily expensive, and it's not an old domain. It has not been around for very long, which is to say, probably fewer than 10 years or so. But yeah, these things got bid way up, right?
Well, there were two of them. One, and they both started at 190.
Yeah, so not that much. I guess 240.
One went for 240, one went for one went for 240, one went for 220.
Okay.
I mean, we are seeing some action on them, right?
Yeah. No, these Bernard Bonat wines are hot, man. This is like a very recent release. It's 2020.
Yes. A lot going down there. Let's switch over and let's take a look at the heavy hitters. We'll take a look at the weekly winners as well. Probably not surprising. It's leading the pack, top 2 spots, 2019 and 2020. Screaming Eagle Cabernet Sauvignon, 2018 going for 75.45. 2020 going for 74.55.
Yes.
Despite the 3 bottle lots OWC. So
this is, I think, the exact same thing happened last week, and I'm still confused as to why the 19 only goes for a tiny bit more than the 20, which was like a very controversial vintage. I'm sure it's great, but
it doesn't make sense to me.
2020 is that's a tricky one.
It doesn't make sense to me. In the third spot, I thought was interesting. 2020 Domaine de la Remedy Conti Corton Charlemagne.
Yeah.
$7,400.
Yeah. No, and that had a bid right out the gate too. I think somebody jumped on it at the beginning of the auction. So I kind of thought maybe he was going to get more activity, but that's a serious price for Corton Charlemagne for sure.
We have this 2019 Harlan Estate 6-ball lot OWC for $7,170.
Yeah.
One bid on it. The one that I thought was really interesting was this 73 Stag's Leap SLV that went for $58.65.
Yeah, and that's the Judgment of Paris winning bottle, so it gets all the attention for that.
The last history.
It's jumped very significantly in value in recent, just in the last 2 or 3 years. I think it actually hammered for slightly more last year. Bottle I think was in better shape. I don't know, maybe the label was in better shape. This bottle was in really good shape, but yeah, it's a rare one.
It looks like from what I can see, and it could have been a condition thing. It looks like it topped out in May of 2022 when it sold for $10,500.
That bottle get multiple bids? Is that a bidding war situation? Yes, it was. Okay, so it looks like 2 people were going after it,
and it's just steadily come down because then in June,
that bottle that sold for 10, by the way, started at 4,200.
Whoa! I mean. So, the condition, I'm sure the condition was...
Yeah, condition's good. I mean, not perfect, but I wouldn't expect to see a perfect one anyway. But still, that's a huge amount of bidding activity, 4,200 to 10,000.
Well, but then you see it slowly come down 10.5, and then a month later in June of 22, it sells for 75.90, and then in September of 22, it sells for 6,000, and then now a year later, a little bit more than a year later, we see it hammer for 58.65.
Yeah, so it's bouncing around a little bit. It's kind of strange. And the funny thing too is that I noticed that just less than a month before that one in May sold for 10,500. There was another bottle in excellent condition that just hammered at the reserve at 4,200.
Right.
It's strange, right?
It's strange. Well, because if you look back to like 2020.
Well, yeah, then prior, it's
$1,900.
Yeah, it just hovers around 2,000 for a couple of years, quite a few years actually. It's sort of fluctuated between 1,300 and 2,500 bucks over a bunch of years. So very strange, but anyway.
Yeah, looks like it started to take off mid 2021 is when it really started jumping. Mid 2021, beginning of 2022. Screaming Eagle, 2017 Screaming Eagle, Cabernet Sauvignon, Mag sold for 56.20, and then a couple bottles of Latache, a 16 that went for 49.40, and then a 15 that went for 47.45. And then I'll mention one more, the 99 Le Pin Mag, which sold for 37.15. I want to say we mentioned that. Did we mention that? I feel like I mentioned that.
Maybe a while back. I think it might have been rolling. That's probably why. Yeah, it's been an auction for a while.
I feel like I mentioned that at some point.
I think we mentioned when it was new back, whenever it was new a few weeks ago.
The 2 bottles of 2020 Petrus had 3 bids on the 2 bottles of Petrus.
Yeah.
They're selling for $3,600 a bottle. So they jumped up from $3,000 to $3,600 a bottle. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at our weekly winners. I mean, it seems like
Bond is having it, man. Bond is still doing it. It's just killing it. There's just, those wines are just on fire. It's amazing.
But, high on 426 for the 04 Eden.
Bond McDonald at 15.
I was just gonna say the McDonald 1510. For the 2010,
for the 2010, which I think you and I drank just a few weeks ago.
It was phenomenal. Don't ask me if it was $1,510 a glass, bottle, phenomenal, but it was really good. And then the 12 went for $775 when the previous record on high was $652. So the 12 is now getting into 13 territory. Makes me wonder if we're going to see movement on the 13.
Yeah, eventually, they'll all probably slowly creep up.
Well,
the 10 is super rare just because
inaugural
first release to the public. There was wine before that, but
it was an 09, but it was just given to like friends and family. In fact, one of the gentlemen that drank the 10 with us said that he said he had the one that was given to friends and family, or he had tasted it, known someone or had been to a party. That was interesting. One thing that I thought was interesting was this 1990 Henschke Hill of Grace Mag, which I actually missed at the auction because we didn't do Australia last week for $12.20.
Yeah, that was in my picks because that's a rare bird for sure. Well,
Hog, I call it Hog Hill of Grace, but Hill of Grace is like, we don't see that coming to auction very much. Like Grange, I feel like we fairly regularly see trickle in. I rarely see Hill of Grace.
Henschke in general is very, very, just rare wines in general. And I think last week or the week before there was some Riesling, which I still think is awesome, and it's very reasonable. It's not,
I've picked up some Henschke Riesling, and I purposely don't mention it. And then because it's so reasonably priced.
Great wines and not expensive. But
not at all.
Like the 90 Magnums, like we've only ever seen 2 of those, I think, in the last 20 years or something. It's just super, super rare wine. So that's a great one for sure.
I think it's interesting to see this. I always mention the Chave Hermitage. We had a 92 that sold for $420. It was a high on record. The other most recent sale of a competitor was in June for $276.
Yeah,
So that's big.
$420s, quite a bit.
Yeah, that's quite a bit for Chauve Hermitage. So some interesting movement there. Let's see.
Yeah, it's a 99 Vegas Cecilia Unico at 600. I thought was quite surprising because that seemed like a really high number to start with. I think the reserve was a little bit inflated based off our standard default reserve, and so I think I was surprised to see that move actually at 600. So that was a record for me too.
But the 04 hammered yesterday at 560, right? And the previous was in 2017 for 557. I mean, it's only $3 off.
But 560 for the 04 is not a crazy price because it's hammered for that before. It's sold for 560 previously, and then 430 or 410 before that. So that wasn't that big of a jump. But the 99 didn't sell anywhere close to the 600 last time it was an auction. I mean, that's just a crazy price. I don't think it's been in for quite a while, but still, that's a big jump. Yeah, last time, well, I mean, let's see, last time it was an auction was 3 years ago and it was 315. So,
and then the Ovid Mag OWC, the 2012, that one hammered for 500.
That still seems like a deal to me.
I mean,
it's very expensive, man, on the list. That
you're looking at,
current release has got to be at least 250. At least 250 for the current
750,
release.
right?
Yeah.
And this is a mag. I didn't think that was crazy, but it was interesting to see Ovid getting some love because I feel like I'm a big fan of Ovid, but I don't know. I feel like we don't see a lot of action on it usually. Like when I pick up bottles of Ovid, I usually get them pretty easily. And I should probably stop talking about it right now because
it's still one of those.
It's so good, though.
Yeah, both Ovid and Continuum are like Pritchard Hill deal. I mean, David Arthur, frankly, for that matter, is as well. He's like super, small, steep hillside vineyards up in this kind of micro appellation up there above the lake. It's really amazing place, and the wines are incredibly good. I mean, from all over, not just Ovid and Continuum, but other spots. I mean, Colgan's up there, and Nine Sons. Well, it's now Realm, but there's some really amazing pieces of land up there, and so I think Ovid's been, and I always say Continuum as well because I have picks this week because I think they're still relatively inexpensive, and now you're seeing Colgan's going pretty crazy. There was another 3-pack of the 2012 that hammered at $13.50, and this stuff just keeps going up and up and up, which is kind of interesting to me that these older vintages that not long after release, they weren't performing that well. Same thing with Bond. They were going for less than mailing list prices, and now we're talking about two wines, Ovid and Continuum specifically, that are definitely going for less than mailing list prices. And so I think that is got to be considered a deal. And yeah, even compared to our competitors, nobody's selling it for a whole lot of money. So it's always interesting to point that out.
Always fascinating to see that. And with that, I think that just about wraps up our auction recap with WineBid's Finally Hammered. This has been Paul Walker and Jeff McGurn wishing you happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers.